Hey Harmony House, how's it going? Welcome to Chapter Book Story Time. Go ahead and find yourself a comfy spot to listen to the story. Today we are on Chapter 20. I think we might actually finish the book today because there's only 2 chapters left and I'm thinking we might just finish them. So exciting! But just to recap, we left off on a really exciting part last time. In Chapter 19, Mr. Dante Vernon was being arrested for trying to steal the Star of Africa because Bazo and his crew made it look like that's what he was trying to do. When we know, of course he wasn't. He was trying to stop Bazo. He was trying to talk to Bazo and tell him not to do this. But instead, Bazo made it look like Mr. Dante Vernon was trying to steal it. So Mr. Vernon, Layla's dad, is now being arrested. But Carter and his friends didn't let that stop them from trying to stop Bazo. So they hopped up on the stage and Ollie and Izzy started putting on their own little show to distract Bazo and his crew. Carter was able to use a magic trick to sneak down under the stage where he was able to take the real Star of Africa, the real diamond, from the tattooed baby and the pockpickets. But now he's running away from them. Bazo knows that he has the diamond, so they're all chasing Carter, while his friends are still all on stage putting on the show. And so now Carter is running away from Bazo and the Spider Lady and the Walrus, and they've just cornered him in a costume closet, and he's trapped. So let's see what happens. Do you think Bazo is going to be able to get the diamond back? Or do you think Carter's going to find a way to get away? I don't know. Let's find out. Chapter 20. As Carter turned, he found himself cornered by Bazo, the Walrus, and the Spider Lady. "You're done, boy," Bazo said. "Give me the diamond." Carter looked desperately around the room. There were shelves of old props, a table with an antique gramophone, musty curtains, and giant mirrors. He grabbed a baseball bat from a nearby shelf, accidentally turning the gramophone on. Instead of playing, the needle rubbed against the record as it spun, making a terrible scratching sound. Carter swung the bat as Bazo reached for him. "Leave me alone!" "You give me that diamond you stole," Bazo growled. "You stole it first," Carter snapped. "And now I'm going to steal it back." As Bazo lunged at Carter, Carter swung again. Bazo backed off, but a sinister grin crawled across his face. "You're trapped, boy. Give it up and I might let you live." "Like Mr. Vernon?" Carter said. "You framed him." "The old fool had it coming," Bazo spit. "Well, I've got news for him. Once the diamond is mine, I'll have everything I've ever wanted right at my fingertips. And Dante, good boy Dante, will be left to rot in a prison." "Until everyone realizes you replaced the Star of Africa with a fake during your act," Carter said, swinging the bat as the Walrus and the Spider Lady reached for him. "By then I'll be gone. I'll be in Bora Bora sipping frosty umbrella drinks and working on my tan," Bazo said. "You're horrible, you know that? First you set up your carnival game so no one could win, then your pockpickets robbed the people who came to your show, you paid off the sheriff so he'd look the other way, and now you've stolen the Star of Africa by switching it with a fake. You ruin people's lives. Admit it," Carter demanded. "I admit all of it. It's not my fault the world's too stupid to realize when it's been suckered. I only show up where I know I can take advantage." Bazo's wild smirk grew on his face. "I'm an entertainer. People adore me. Will that ever make me rich enough? Hardly, but that diamond sure will. So yeah, I took it. What are you gonna do about it, kid?" "Only everything." Carter smiled, dropping the bat on the floor. "Thank you, Mr. Bazo. That's all we needed to hear." "We?" Bazo whispered. Carter pulled a rope hidden in a far corner. The four walls and ceiling of the fake prop room fell away. Carter, Bozo, the walrus, and the spider lady were left standing on the center of the stage. The entire audience, cops and all, had heard everything Bozo had confessed. So Carter and his friends tricked Bozo and his crew by making a fake prop room to make it look like Carter was cornered, he was trapped, but in fact, they were on the middle of the stage. They were in the middle of the stage where the whole audience could hear them and the police that were there. "How?" Bozo screamed. "You were chasing me backstage through curtain after curtain," Carter said. I led you in one big circle, straight into a trap. And just in case anyone missed your confession, Carter moved the needle back on the gramophone record and switched it from record to play. "I admit all of it. It's not my fault that the world's too stupid to realize when it's being suckered." Bozo's recorded voice played back for the audience. Ridley had been holding up a sign for the audience that said "Silence." She tossed it on the floor and wheeled backstage with the others. Then Ridley, Ollie, Izzy, Layla, and Theo pushed a line of hotel room service carts, one tied to the next, onto the stage. They removed the silver tray lids one after the other. Each cart was heaped with the stolen goods from Bozo's bathtub: wallets, rings, bracelets, watches, wedding bands, and more. "Police, townspeople, visitors," Carter shouted. Bozo tried to steal the Star of Africa, but he was also working with the sheriff and a dangerous band of pickpockets. If you lost something in the last few days, it's probably here. "He stole my wedding ring," someone in the audience shouted. "He stole my wallet." "He stole my earrings and bracelet." "He spent my whole allowance on his dumb games." "I spent my whole allowance on his dumb games." The entire audience began booing him. 2 police officers took the sheriff into custody, while the rest rushed the stage and surrounded Bozo and his goons. Theo asked, "Would you like to take a final bow?" Layla ran off the stage and over to Mr. Vernon. She hugged her dad and said, "We did it!" "Yes, you did," Mr. Vernon said, rubbing at his bruised skull. "I never had a doubt in my mind." "Let me take off those handcuffs," the policeman said. "No need. I've been getting out of handcuffs since I could walk." Mr. Vernon made a peculiar motion with his hands, and the cuffs fell off. He gave them to the police officer. "Voila." "Brilliant," Carter whispered. Yay! So that was the end of chapter 20, which is why I was thinking we'll just read to the end because that was a short chapter. But so exciting. So Carter and his friends did it. They were able to trick Bozo into confessing all of his crimes on stage in front of everyone by making him think he had trapped Carter in a prop room, when in fact it was all fake. They had set up these curtains to make it look like a room, when in fact they were in the middle of the stage. And Carter got Bozo talking. Bozo admitted to all of his crimes, and everyone heard it. And they even got it on recording, too. And then at the end, while Bozo was being arrested, Layla and Theo and Izzy and Ridley and Ollie and all of them rolled out carts full of all of the stolen goods that Bozo had taken from people, all of the wallets and watches and things. So they were able to return those to everybody, and Mr. Dante Vernon, Layla's dad, is no longer being arrested. He is free, he is innocent, and that's really exciting. So let's see what happens in the last chapter, chapter 21. From the top of the stationary train car in the train yard, Carter could see the Grand Oak Resort, the quiet town of Mineral Wells, and the tents of Bozo's Carnival, which was silent and still in the morning light. After everything that had happened in the last few days, Carter wondered if he was beginning to believe in magic. Not the kind where you can actually make things disappear or cast a spell, but the kind where you can't sleep because you're so full of joy that you stay awake and watch the sun come up. Carter was certain that he'd never seen such beautiful colors in the sky before. Sitting cross-legged on top of BB Bozo's loop car, Carter watched below as the police cracked open the locks. When they finally got the metal train car door open, a mountain of wallets and watches and rings and more poured out. Later, the police would find that there had been a rash of thefts in every town B.B. Bozzo's carnival had been to. Carter and the Misfits had solved hundreds, if not thousands, of unsolved petty theft crimes. While the police collected and boxed the goods, trying to figure out how to return everything to their proper owners, Carter continued to marvel at the sky's streaks of yellow, orange, and red, all tied together like the multicolored silk handkerchiefs that his father had used in a magic trick long ago. As the brilliant sun crowned the horizon, it sent a fan of rays toward him, surrounding him with warmth. A few tracks away, a freight train chugged off into the distance, fleeing from the rising light. Carter wondered what he would do next. He couldn't stay at Theo's house for long. Mr. and Mrs. Steinmeier would only start asking questions. If you remember, even though Theo let Carter stay with him, they didn't tell Theo's parents the truth about Carter being, on his own, because they didn't want Theo's parents to report him and have him get sent back to Uncle Sly. Should I hop a train, he wondered, just to see where it takes me next? You weren't going to leave without saying goodbye, were you? Mr. Vernon asked. Ah! Carter screamed, startled to find he was no longer alone. The magician sat next to him, as if he had been there the whole time. How do you do that? Carter asked. Very quietly, Mr. Vernon smiled. Well, were you going to leave town? I don't want to, Carter said. But the police are already asking about my parents. I can't go into foster care. Who knows where I'd end up? A wise man once said that decisions are best made in the morning after a good night's sleep, a shower, and a well-rounded breakfast. At this point, you've missed the sleep part, but the other Mr. Vernon is making breakfast back at our home, and there are a few people who'd like to see you before you make a decision. Breakfast sounds good, Carter said, feeling his cheeks burn. Good. Come along, Mr. Vernon said, as he climbed down the train car ladder. What do you think Carter should do? Should he try to stay in Mineral Wells but risk being sent back to Uncle Sly? Or should he leave and move on to the next town, but be alone again? When he walked into Mr. Vernon's dining room in the apartment above the magic shop, Carter was surprised to see the entire gang there. Theo, Ridley, Layla, Ollie, and Izzy were all helping to set the table. Carter! They screamed, running over to hug him. We did it! We really did it! Layla said. We took down Bozzo and his circle of stooges. Not all of them, Theo said. The police arrested Bozzo, the sideshowers, and the pock pickets, but they never found the frown clowns. A worry for another day, the other Mr. Vernon said, walking into the room with a platter stacked high with pancakes and strawberries. For now, it's time to eat. Perhaps after presents, Mr. Vernon suggested. He presented 4 boxes and placed them before Carter, Theo, Layla, and Ridley. I'm sorry, Ollie and Izzy, but I didn't know we'd be having 2 more join us. No worries, Ollie said, stuffing his mouth. These pancakes are treats enough. When the 4 misfits opened their packages, they found what they had thought lost. When the 4 misfits opened their packages, they found what they had thought lost. Layla's lucky lockpicks, Ridley's journal, Theo's bow, and Carter's wooden box. Carter held the small, carved box to his chest, tracing his fingers over the initials LWL. But how? Carter asks. So, if you recall, Bozzo and his crew had stolen all of their most prized possessions, but when they found all the stolen goods that Bozzo and his crew had stolen, their stuff wasn't among it. So they had never found their stuff. But somehow, Mr. Vernon got it for them. But how? Carter asked. A good magician never tells, Mr. Vernon said. But Carter's quick mind began to sort through the details of the last few days. When he first met Mr. Vernon, he'd given Carter the book about the vanishing object on the podium trick. Mr. Vernon was old friends with B.B. Bobby Bozzo. He must have known that Bozzo would try to steal the diamond, and how. He also must have pickpocketed the pockpickets along the way and retrieved the Misfits' things. We were never on our own, were we? Carter concluded. You were looking after us from the beginning, making sure we were never in any real danger. The coins in my pocket, the blanket in the park. Layla squinted. What coins? What blanket? I have no idea what he's talking about. Mr. Vernon smiled, helping himself to a pancake. What will you do now, Carter? Theo asked. Carter shrugged. After everything they'd been through together, after everything they'd done for him, how could he tell his friends what he'd been planning only an hour earlier? The thought made him feel empty inside. He didn't want to leave Mineral Wells or his new friends, but what other option did he have? The others must have been able to read it all in Carter's face. You can't leave, Layla blurted out. You have to stay. Theo patted Carter on the back, and even Ridley seemed to frown. Actually, I may have one more trick up my sleeve, Mr. Vernon said. He waved the kids to follow him out of the apartment and into the connecting magic shop. Theo, always a gentleman, held the door open for everyone. Woof woof, I'm a rabbit, squawked Presto. Silly bird, Layla laughed. Mr. Vernon led the kids and the other Mr. Vernon into the secret room and over to the wall covered in photos. On it were dozens of black and white images of different magicians, but near the bottom there was one that stood out. It was a sepia-toned photo of 6 kids, their arms around one another. Who are they? Layla asked, studying the photo. The Emerald Ring, said Mr. Vernon. There's me as a boy, about your age. And that's Bozzo. Back then, he went by the name Bobby Boskowitz. You knew each other? Ridley asked. We did. We were the best of friends, Mr. Vernon said. Bozzo, myself, and the rest of our friends were all misfits, just like you. But that's not what I wanted to show you. I wanted to draw Carter's attention to Lyle. He pointed to one of the boys in the photograph. He looks kind of like Carter, Layla said. Lyle was my dad's name, Carter whispered, confused. Just as I suspected, Mr. Vernon said, tears forming in his eyes. From the first time I saw you, I wondered, but I decided it was impossible, that my old mind was playing tricks on me. Then this evening, when I pickpocketed the pockpickets, I found your box with the initials LWL. By chance, do they stand for Lyle Wilder Locke? Carter nodded, stunned. You knew my dad? I did, and very well too, Mr. Vernon said. Lyle was my cousin. Something welled up inside Carter, forming a baseball-sized lump in his throat. Other than Uncle Sly, he didn't think he had any family. Your cousin? When Lyle met your mother, they moved to the West Coast to be closer to her family, Mr. Vernon explained. After your parents, I knew that you ended up living with another relative, but no one seemed to know who or where. For years I looked for you. I never gave up, but I never imagined that fate would bring you to Mineral Wells. Not fate, Layla said. Magic. Magic, fate, or coincidence. Carter wasn't sure which was which anymore. He remembered hopping onto the yellow train car several days earlier like it was the right thing to do. Then again, all the tracks were leading in the same direction. Magic, fate, coincidence. Maybe at a certain point, thought Carter, all of these ideas start to blur together. Carter, would you like to come live with us? Mr. Vernon asked. Carter didn't have any words, so he just nodded yes. Oh my goodness, so this is crazy. So we find out that Carter's dad, who, disappeared, we still don't really know what happened to him and his mom, but turns out that Carter's dad was Mr. Dante Vernon's cousin, and they were best friends as kids. So that means that Mr. Dante Vernon is Carter's family, which means he'll be able to stay and live with Mr. Dante Vernon, which means he'll get to stay in Mineral Wells with all of his friends. This is so exciting. The four friends gathered in the secret room hidden inside the magic shop. After they'd gotten their faces in the local paper for saving the day, they decided they should keep practicing magic and see what they could really do. "Should we have a name for our organization?" Theo asked. "What about the Emerald Ring?" said Layla. "Just like my dad's group from when he was a kid." "That'll only make me think of Bozo and his goons," Ridley added. "Thanks, but no thanks." "How about the Ollie and Izzy gang?" Ollie said. "Or the Izzy and Ollie gang," Izzy said. "Where'd you two come from?" Ridley asked, annoyed. "You're not the only ones who know tricks," the twins said together. Ollie added, "And we're happy to join. We have our own performance to perfect, but we don't mind showing up from time to time." "As guest stars," Izzy finished. "So yes, count us in too." "This is awkward," Ridley said, nodding toward the twins. "But we're forming a gang of magicians." "Yeah, awesome," cried Ollie. "Does this mean we get special outfits?" asked Izzy. Ridley shook her head. "You don't understand. You can't be in it. Neither of you know illusion work." "That's not true," said Ollie. He grabbed Izzy's hand and tried to pull off her thumb. "Ouch!" Izzy cried, smacking her brother. "I think magic is about more than stagecraft," Carter said. "It's about happiness. It's about laughter. It's about that feeling you get inside. I think Ollie and Izzy do that." "Well put," Theo said, patting Carter on the back. "I agree," Layla said. "Fine," Ridley gave in. "But in the future, new members will be subject to a rigorous nomination process." "So, what are we going to call ourselves?" Layla asked. "How about the Magical Greats?" suggested Ridley. "The Magic Diamonds?" tried Carter. "We need something unique, just like us," said Theo. Then Carter said, "Seems like everyone's been calling us Misfits. Bozo, the Pockpickets." "I like the idea of using the bad guys label for us," said Ridley. "That is powerful." "Misfits," Layla repeated, trying out the word. "Nice." "Agreed," Ollie and Izzy said. Theo gave a thumbs up. "The Magic Misfits," Carter said. He loved it. It was almost as if the fact that he'd never fit in was what made him belong right here at this table. "Well, now that we have our name, what should we do?" "Teach ourselves more magic, of course," Layla said. Carter had learned how to do magic tricks from his uncle, but those were just that, tricks. There was no magic involved. From his new family and friends, Carter was learning that real magic did exist. You just had to know where to look. And there you have it. The Magic Misfits. That's it. We finished it. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited for Carter. He finally has a place where he feels like he belongs. He has a family, and he has all of his friends. And they were able to stop Bozo. They did it. So one thing is, though, it didn't answer the question, what happened to Carter's parents? I don't know. We still don't really know that. But at the end of the day, he has a family now, and he has people that love him, and he has a safe place to be. And so I think that's awesome. I hope you enjoyed the book. Nice job getting through it. Yeah, I really liked that. Noodles liked it too. She says, "Thanks for reading with us." Huh. Bye, everybody.